So, Varesa has been drip marketed, and with that I'm sure a lot of you are curious as to how you're going to build this interesting looking cow lady luchador that crushes enemies with her ass. Well, no need to fear, I'm here to help you start preparing for her. Hello there, Flip here, and today we're going to be giving a rundown of Varesa's ascension and talent materials so you can pre-farm for her, as well as look over her best artifacts and weapons. But before we do that, as always, if at any point during the video you're entertained or informed, make sure to drop a like and even consider subscribing, as I talk on various topics regarding Genshin's meta and I'll try to keep you updated. Channel members, thank you as always, lending you hugs and kisses, and with that, let's begin. Alright, let's quickly burn through her materials. Unfortunately though, being the Collective of Plenty poster 5-star, you are going to be unable to farm for 2 of her materials, so I'd recommend stocking up on Fragile Resin right now in the Battle Pass, and buying Transient Resin 2 weeks in advance from her banner, so that you'll be able to farm and get her boss done day 1. I'm so happy bosses respawn instantly without you needing to teleport away. How did we let that slide for 5 years? So yeah, boss farming thankfully isn't that much of a pain in the ass. Just stock up on a ton of resin. You also can't get her local specialties right now, you just don't have a way of grabbing these before the region expansion, so good luck I guess on day 1. Hopefully there's more than 168 so you don't have to cope for the rest of them. And oh my god, Varesa is going to be a pain in the ass to get going because her common enemy drops for Ascension are this Saurian claws. Do they want people to pull for her? These are quite literally the worst things to farm in Natlan. Moving on, for high level talents, the weekly drop she needs is the one from the Natlan Dragon, so just carry on doing it weekly. And then for her books, Varesa's talents are the Wednesday and Saturday ones, so you'll be able to start farming that in 2 days, assuming I don't procrastinate and this video is released on time. I would actually recommend spending all your resin on these every Wednesday and Saturday until her release, as I think for the first time in Natlan, Varesa gains utilization from all 3 of her talents, mainly her normal attack and burst talent, but still. This skill does some damage that isn't negligible, so I try and aim to crown both her basic and burst talent, and then get her skill to like level 8 or 9. Oh yeah, Varesa's Electra by the way, I don't know if the pulsating lightning gave it away, so you're going to want to have some Electro Stones, although I doubt that's an issue for most players. Ideally we would get straight into the build guide, but I'm aware some of you don't know what Varesa does, so I'm going to be briefly going over her kit. If you want more information on Varesa and her playstyle, as well as how strong she's looking to be in the meta currently, then I'd recommend going to the Varesa video I made a few days ago, as it goes very in depth into her combos and playstyles, and shows how she stacks up compared to other DPS. But to put her kit in the most layman terms, Varesa is an Electro Catalyst 5-star character, and her kit revolves around doing multiple plunging attacks. Her skill will enable you to do a plunge, and her burst can be changed into a different plunging attack that is chainable into her normal plunges. And to me, this is one of the more interesting kits in Genshin. I'm not doing it a service. Also, the amount of damage she's able to dish out is ludicrous, considering the fact that she sits on enemies. And there's even more stuff that I can't really discuss, because if I get started into how this character functions, this video will end up being 20 minutes long, so let me just stop here, and if you want to know more about Varesa, go watch my video on her. She's one of the most complex yet strong characters Genshin has released in a while. We can now finally get started on the build guide, in which let's go over her artifacts first, in which Varesa has 2 sets you're going to want to use, or at least 2 sets that are recommendable on her. The first being the Long Night's Oath set, and if you haven't heard of it, it's because it's a special plunging set designed just for her that's about to be released, and I literally just made a video on how effective this artifact set is on a multitude of different characters. I feel like a door-to-door salesman with how everything ties into each other. Back on topic, yes, this is her signature set, but being a Natlan character, she can also get very good utilization out of Obsidian Codex, even though it has anti-synergy with her. Varesa quite literally doesn't get the 2-piece effect for over half of her field's time, but it's almost like tying 40% crit rate to an artifact set makes it very hard to beat unless you release an overtuned artifact set, which the Oath set just isn't. A fellow theory crafter and my friend Vomfi did the calculations for the artifact sets, which are on screen now, and the weapon sheet I'll show later in the video is also done by him, but as of the version 1 beta, there really isn't a massive incentive for you to go for the plunging set, especially considering the fact that the other artifact set in the domain is useless right now. Where in the Obsidian Codex domain you have the scroll set, which is the best supportive set in the game, even for most non-Natlan characters. So if things were to stay as they are now, I'd recommend trying to fish for a good codex set, as at most you are literally getting a 5% damage increase from the set, which is 2 crit subs. However, this is the current version 1 beta, and looking at other sets like Nighttime Whispers, Whimsy, and just a lot of the recent signature sets, I don't expect them to keep the set this underpowered. So unless you do have a reason to be farming the scroll and obsidian codex domain anyways. I wouldn't dump any fragile resins or anything trying to fish for a codex set for Varesa, because you can quote me on this, but there's a very big chance they buff the set. It just universally isn't in a good state right now. Besides these two, every other set would be pretty far behind damage wise, and unlike Clorned, you can't even cope with something like Thundering Fury, because Varesa innately has infinite skills if you play her correctly, as well as the fact that you wouldn't even really use her in Dendro or reaction oriented teams like Aggravate, because her best partner Eonton applies no off-field Electro, on top of Varesa not applying that much Electro over her rotation either, so just yeah, Oath, Obsidian, or Bust currently. For main stats, as standard, you're going to want an Attack Sands, Electro Goblet, and Crit Circlet to balance out your ratio. Varesa does somewhat have an energy requirement of like 130%, as her burst is very important to her rotations, but 130 isn't that many subs, so I believe in you having an artifact set that facilitates that. And as standard, for pretty much every DPS, crit rate and damage are the substats you're looking for the most, and then attack percent. There isn't that much more to really add to the artifact, so let's talk about her best weapons next. Going from best to worst elites according to Vomfi's weapon sheet, as expected, her signature weapon is a decent margin ahead of everything else. But surprisingly, for a Natlan signature weapon, it isn't that much ahead. I remember from calcing Mualani and Kinich that their weapons were like 30% ahead than the free-to-play weapons. But I guess Hoyoverse is toning it down. Wonderful, everyone clap. Her signature weapon has a very high base attack with a crit damage substat, and the passive goes ahead to further boost the crit damage of plunge attacks when you use an elemental skill or are in the plunging state or whatever. New DPS Xian Yun weapon just dropped. Now going down the list, we have Lost Prayers. It gives crit rate and damage bonus. You can't really go wrong. Okay, well actually you can go wrong because Varesa ascending with crit rate, and this weapon having a decent amount of crit rate means you can't really consider Obsidian as a set, because almost all of its value is within the crit boost, and using a crit rate weapon greatly diminishes this. Now we can talk about this weapon. Widzith is such an awkward weapon to discuss because it is good, but it can fuck you over, and that can be very annoying. Varesa doesn't benefit from all 3 stacks of Widzith, so there's a 1 in 3 chance that you just go 2 rotations without having a weapon passive, which can be extremely frustrating. But in the same vein, Widzith is also underrated in calculations to an extent, because this is averaging all of Widzith's effects, meaning you get a useless buff. But in practice, if Widzith gets the damage buff or the attack buff, it blows every other weapon out of the water besides Varesa's signature. So if you don't mind reset gaming and have a Widzith above Refinement 3, it's good enough to where you realistically don't have to get Varesa's signature. I still don't really like the weapon because of how inconsistent it is, but if you don't have anything else, it isn't like a cope option or anything, it's just a very good option in general. It can just be quite inconsistent. Moving on, yes, it's extremely funny, but you can use Xian Yun's signature if you got unlucky on the banner and have nothing to do with it. It should also be quite a comfy option as it restores energy per plunge. Skyward Atlas exists, and if you actually just have nothing else, then Flowing Purity is a solid enough option. Assuming she's well built, Miltank is doing more than enough damage on this weapon to where you aren't going to be struggling to clear with it. And with that, there isn't that much to say, so thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment what you are going to be using on Varesa, as I'd love to hear it and I respond to almost every single comment. Channel members, I'm really grateful for all your continued support. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys on the flip side. Peace.